Shall I do the intro, or do you just want to do it?
You go for it.
Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking, where we get into arguments with random strangers about things that don't really matter. We used to have a philosophy, but it's season 4. We're running out of steam. What can I say? But Jacob is a very interesting character. Very blessed to have him. We heard his episode on the 47th President podcast, which I found very interesting, and I've checked out his other podcasts from there. Is it Underrated, Overhated?
Yeah, that's right. And my YouTube channel is my like online name is Big Yellow Praxis, which is my YouTube stuff. Yes, it's a podcast about music primarily. And then
What kind of music? A bit of everything?
Yeah, like lots of folk, blues, kind of progressive rock, like classic rock as well.
I cannot recommend your episode on Jim Steinman enough. That was absolutely beautiful. As a huge Meatloaf fan.
Yes.
I just loved that insight into Jim Steinman. And yeah, I just think it's one of those podcasts where, check it out. You'll see one of the episodes that appeals to you and you'll want to deep dive on, and you have really interesting in-depth conversations about interesting musical characters.
Sounds good. We'll check it out for sure.
I agree. It is good. Thank you.
Yay, we're agreeing. That's good. Now let's start the debates.
Let's get to the disagreeing.
One of the things you mentioned on your chat on the 47th was about Brexit, and it's something we've had some fun debates on over the years. We tried to avoid it for 6 episodes, but it kept coming up, so eventually we're like, fine, we have to fucking episode on Brexit. I maybe like Meatloaf, I think nostalgia tints my feelings towards Brexit, but yeah, I just think that ultimately anyone that says leaving the EU was good economically is lying. Anyone that says the second referendum wasn't anti-democratic is also lying. So fight me.
I'm not sure how more democracy can be anti-democracy.
Well, so if we had, for example, when Donald Trump lost the election and was saying, let's have more democracy, let's have another vote because I don't trust the result of this election and we should not make Biden president, we should have another vote. That is technically more democracy, but it's not more democratic.
I think that's it's not a category error, is it? I think it's just wrong. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if that analogy works because with Donald Trump, it's like we know it's disingenuous and we know it's just trying to undermine democracy. But let's reframe it. Within what time frame would it be anti-democratic to have another referendum? If we had another one in 10 years, would that? I don't think you would think that is anti-democratic.
No, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. So within the time frame of the thing that got voted for being done, and people were calling for a second referendum before Brexit had even been triggered. So that seemed to me
so I agree,
not to honour the result of the referendum.
I agree. So some of those immediate calls were, I don't know, whether it was disingenuous or whether it was just kind of pandering to their voter base or whether it is. I agree that there are some big question marks around those. But
I mean devastating for Corbyn's campaign in the last election. Right?
Certainly, yeah. But I mean, it was never framed as a binding referendum, and it was never clear from the onset like what we would do with the decision. So I think had we done that from the start, which clearly should have been done, then I think we'd be having a very different conversation. I think there's a lot of. I think we're already coming to a middle ground here, so this is maybe not the most fun debate ever. But
no, it's fine.
There's clearly a time frame within which it wouldn't be seen as like anti-democratic, and I think it would be perfectly legitimate. And I think clearly we can point to some of the kind of calls for a second referendum immediately after as questionable, let's call it. But yeah, I don't think fundamentally raising question marks about the conduct of the Leave team, I guess, is anti-democratic, and I don't think broader questions about when is it appropriate to have a second referendum potentially is anti-democratic. So again, that's kind of my boring.
Always with this, we pretend we're going to have a debate and then we kind of reach a lukewarm consensus. I don't think we're centrist.
There's this point of the losers wanting to have more democracy, and the winners are like, okay, it's fine. This is the choice, right?
Yeah, we could have had a second referendum about like what kind of Brexit do you actually want? and then you go like hard Brexit, soft Brexit, easy over, whatever. Or no, we don't want it actually. Things have changed, we've got new information. Have that option there, and have the threshold have to be like 50% of people have to vote no to get it like cancelled.
Yeah. But
make it really difficult, but have it there.
To my mind, that would be moving the goalposts. And I do actually think God, it wasn't the last election, but the election before. We've had so many in the last few years. Everyone's lost count. It was testament to the fact that people were kind of, most people, the majority of people were done with the conversation and were prepared to vote for get Brexit done as a tagline, as fun as that is. I think, you know, as we've said, we don't want to talk about it too much. I want to get into the topic of today. But broadly, I heard a lot of people talking how this proves that you can't trust people with referendums, that people are stupid, they shouldn't be given the vote, we shouldn't have more referendums. And I fundamentally disagree with that more than I'm not pro-Brexit, but I actually think we should have more democracy in our system, more referendums, and even if sometimes the results are bad, make people feel that they'll vote with more care next time.
Binding or advised or?
It's tough. There's an example. There's problems with both, right? The problems with
'cause if you
advice
say
is
it's
then you still
advisory,
debate.
you
Well,
just
what
do
did
it
that
anyway.
mean? And yeah. So, there's no easy solutions to this.
But I think more democracy doesn't just mean referendums. It means more democracy at every level. It's such a shift in gear with the way that we would treat politics that it's kind of hard. It is a paradigm shift, isn't it? It's hard to really encapsulate. It's not just we'll have more binding or potentially advisory referendums. It's literally from the local level to the top. You know, more
devolution, not just Wales, Scotland, Ireland, but a local level. First past the post binary two-party voting systems, which I don't think many people would defend these days. But obviously, the two parties in power. Yeah, seem to quite like it.
I love it.
So I would honestly kind of argue against referendums, because in the elective or representative democracy, you elect your representative and you trust your representative is going to argue for whatever stance you want to have argued for, right? And if that person is elected, you can sort of sit back and be like, okay, I put my political power onto this person, and I trust this person is going to fight for the causes that I care about.
Yeah.
So why even go into referendum? And the Dutch people voted against the EU ground law, like the base law for the EU. Was that a good choice? I'm not sure, but we blocked it.
I mean, I think there's an appropriate time to have a referendum, and there's no absolute answer, but I don't think we can say referendums are completely inappropriate tool to be used in a democracy, even if we do have representatives, and whether it's a parliament or whatever. I certainly wouldn't take it off the table, but I do agree broadly that it's not the most important thing, But I also think just having a representative that we vote for every 4 years, let's say, as it is here, but it doesn't
every 1 year at the moment, but sure.
That's not the end all be all. Like, it should be participatory democracy on every level, and we don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's always going to be a work in progress. And I think it comes back to what you're saying before, like if we have a referendum and we choose the wrong thing, then we should still go ahead with it, because the electorate are only going to start acting like adults once we're treated like adults.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how adults work, You get to the age of like 15, 16, you start, doing things a bit more independently or whatever,
And fucking up royally.
Exactly, and there's nothing wrong with that. And well, there is obviously something wrong with it. It's still fucking up. I'm not trying to avoid that. But at the same time, it's a kind of it's a very like patting the kind of electorate on the head attitude, isn't it? Of like, oh yeah, well, we gave you a go and you fucked it up, and we'll just retain power. And I think it's a huge conversation, realistically, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm an optimist. I do believe more democracy would solve a lot of things, from having workers on boards to having more power at local level. To just giving people a say. I don't think many people would vote for war if that was decided more democratically. But the system as it tends to gravitate towards that option. So yeah, I think some things would be better. And I also think, if you gave people, where would you like to see your tax dollars spent, I think education and healthcare would get a lot more than our elected representatives often choose to.
Even though they do advertise, during the elections.
Yes, that's always the argument, right? That people are more sway to corporate interest than a politician is who goes for lunch once a week with a lobbyist. We'll see. Challenging times. So speaking of royal fuck ups, smooth transition.
What a segue.
Let's get into it. So it's coming up more and more. Obviously, I think Prince Andrew is going to be hard for me to defend. Wish me luck there. But the royal family and whether it should be abolished. Let's open it up, not just the UK, but also beyond, although the UK is the most famous and expensive example, obviously. Just quick straw poll. I'm presuming it's 3 versus 1. You guys are all against monarchies. I'm 4. Is that what I'm up against here?
Oh,
monarchies are great. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey,
Jacob,
we're just picking on Jacob.
Let's do this. Yeah,
I don't understand.
He's honestly against it.
I'm very against
we did a pre-debate. I'm neither against it nor for it.
Ryan's in the middle here.
Yeah, I can see good examples and bad examples.
It's as good as the monarchy, right?
Which
and I come from a different kind of monarchy than you guys, right? So
yeah, which we'll get into. Jacob, you fully against it in all its formats?
Yeah, I'm fully against. By definition, in fact, like a monarchy cannot be justified. I mean, we can start like kind of blurring it around the edges, at which point it stops being a monarchy. We can get to the details in a bit if you want, but yeah, it's just.
It's weird, isn't it? Isn't it weird? Like, if it were not for its being traditional, if suddenly someone came up with this system that we'd never had before, people would be like, "Are you mental?
So
what are you talking about?"
Well, yeah. Have you ever played Crusader Kings 2?
No.
Yeah, like if you want to find out how freaky the Middle Ages fight for royalty is, play that game because it's fucking absurd, right? How land titles worked, how they were divided amongst family, what you had to do to retain land titles upon succession is crazy. It's huge Game of Thrones that took place the last couple hundred years.
I can't recommend that game enough, but mostly the experience of that game is just you failing at it for the first 20 hours until you get on a forum and go, help, and they go, just play as Ireland, you'll be fine. Ireland's easy mode. It's complicated. I love it. But the liberal take is always, would we approach this system sensibly in a vacuum? And the conservative take is, but society isn't a vacuum, and you could throw the baby out with the bathwater if you just rewrote everything and ignored all tradition.
What baby? What's the baby? I'm interested to hear what your opinion is. What's the good things about the royal family?
Well, it's the boogeyman of the left, isn't it? You wanna throw out every single country, what makes every single country unique and traditional, and make us a homogenous mass of all wearing red work coveralls as we go to the factory comrades, right? That's what this is about.
Basically, that's what we want, isn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, unironically.
Exactly. And what are the benefits of a royal family? Like, I'd be keen to hear.
To hear the benefits as well.
So there is an argument.
No. Not there is an argument. What do you
think of the benefits? Yeah.
Traditions, symbological power.
Yeah, I mean,
people just feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, people like it.
But what's the benefit?
Okay, no. Okay, so we'll start there. The majority of people in most countries where the Queen of England is their queen, head of state, get given referendums and keep choosing to keep it. So argument one is it's apparently popular. I understand the arguments against it, but people like it.
People like it.
As soon as you appeal to the democratic principle, it ceases to be a monarchy. So that's where I was saying before.
It's a constitutional monarchy, right?
Because look, there's how often should we have these referendums? Because no generation gets to choose, into perpetuity how a country should run for future generations. So we need to do it every once in a while. Yeah. So we've now become really a democratic monarchy, which is really not a monarchy because we're going to keep doing these referendums every, let's say, 20
What,
years.
did you think I'd argue for an absolute monarchy and that we should get rid of Parliament and the Queen should run things?
No, but it's not a monarchy if you vote for it. And this is because if you make this argument to people who are real royalists, and you're not really a real royalist, you're just like okay with it. If you make this argument, they're inherently against that. Like they do.
But
not
they would
want
hate the referendum even. Yeah.
They don't want the democratic principle applied to monarchy because they recognize that's not a monarchy. So I'm for that. Like if we're going to apply democracy to it, then yeah, we'll do that because democracy is great. But then it's not a monarchy. So I don't understand what conversation we can have on that point.
Well, no, I think we can because like just because you agree that as long as it's popular, then it has a right to stay in some quashed form. But like with any referendum, you would be on the side who would make their case, get rid of these tax scrounging, child raping, incestual motherfuckers, right?
Yes, yeah.
I think we've just lost all the monarchists on the podcast, so carry on.
I wouldn't use those words, you know. But yeah.
Yeah. So I just think bring it within the sphere of what is legitimate politics, which is democracy. And no adult can really disagree with that. And then I'm okay with it because then it's another thing that we can talk about and have a discussion about, and people can disagree. And if most people disagree with me, that's fine. I'm used to it. But then it ceases to be a democracy. So it ceases to be a real monarchy. So
isn't that what's happened?
What we have in Netherlands, Denmark is not a monarchy. You're saying, even though we're spending quite a bit of money on it.
Well, if you're bringing the monarchy into like the democratic field of debate, then it's not a monarchy because a monarchy is hereditary on some level. It ceases to be that really once you start. Like, why don't we? Even better, an even more democratic version of it. Like, why don't we vote which family becomes the monarchy for the next 20 years and do that on a series of?
This is going to be my argument. I'm not sure that I agree with you, Jake, about the democratic thing. It's like, okay, that's one way of doing it. But the other way is like, okay, then let's keep monarchy, but let's get rid of the nepotism completely. And let's just make it egalitarian. Let's just get like the best family. Yeah. Do like X Factor for royal family. People would love that. They'd go absolutely nuts for it. Do you know what I mean? And then at least you'd train up a bunch of families in politics and etiquette and all this rubbish. And then you'd get like people to vote on it or something. Do you know what I mean?
Although I will concede that that's a very good reality TV show you just pitched, and it would be successful. There are problems, but Jacob, you can go first.
I kind of want to put my foot down here because I think that it's the argument that it's popular amongst most people is the argument of a losing side. So really, if we're debating
for now, it's popular.
But that's the thing; it's the argument of a losing side because we should really be debating about like the value that a monarchy brings as a monarchy. Yeah. So
we've got comfort.
Yeah, we were saying most people like it.
Well, tradition
and culture.
What's the benefit?
This is the reason why you don't want to have this X factor, right? You want to have consistency.
But what's the benefit of that? Like, that's what it is.
I'll explain, Finn. There's a reason why we have close ties to Canada and Australia and lots of countries in the Caribbean and Africa. And it's not because we have an X Factor family showing up every 4 years to do a tour. And it's not because President Boris goes and gives speeches with the nice people of Africa and convinces them with his charm and political correctness. There is this something bigger, nobler, like religious functions, right? Something bigger than we chose this guy 3 years ago, and if we're honest, not many people like him, but that's what the system spat out. So
the link we have with those countries is called history and culture. It's a very like myopic or even just like vapid idea of culture and tradition that it would disappear if we got rid of the monarchy. Like, what do you think it is to be British? I mean, there's cuisine, there's music, there's history, there's literature. We get rid of the royal family.
We have cuisine. I think we imported all of our best cuisine, didn't we?
Every country in the world has done that. I mean, like chilies are a key component of Indian food. Like so is cinnamon. They don't come from India. This is just the norm. Like risotto is what? Is that Italian? No, I don't think it is. It's just the norm, and we don't abandon our culture because we abandon an institution. I don't understand that notion of culture whatsoever.
Surely it's part of it. You think it's entirely separate. The Church of England,
no. I'm not saying it's separate, but slavery was a part of the culture of the South, was it not?
Yeah, but until the royal family Yeah, as long as they're not keeping slaves, I won't feel as strongly against abolishing it.
He's not making a comparison.
I'm not equating the two, but it's an analogy to show that it's not a good argument to appeal to tradition.
Well, no, good traditions are worth keeping and bad traditions are worth throwing out. And you've yet to persuade me that the monarchy is a bad tradition.
But we've not heard any benefits, really. We got it's comfortable. It's a tradition, which isn't really a benefit. It's just like what it is or not. But what are the benefits? Like, what is it? Like, come on, Chris, tourism. People always use that one, don't they? They wheel that out.
Yeah.
Come to visit the Queen.
I actually did start with our international relations, and the royal family does a lot of work at projecting more power and influence, soft power and influence abroad than I can imagine an embassy doing, like
what about
X Factor elected spokesperson doing. Like,
I think the problem with that specific argument, Chris, is that it's just basically an argument to incredulity. Like, oh, I couldn't see someone else doing it just as well. It's just that's fine. I mean, I couldn't see someone.
We do have ambassadors, like, so there is a comparison to be made. I think people care a lot more when the Queen does a state visit than when the ambassador does. I've seen the ambassador in Thailand, and he doesn't have any political sway. When the Queen comes, traffic stops, everyone has meetings. Like, that is important part of,
and I agree.
International relations is having a good, powerful spokesperson.
Stopping the traffic and having meetings is a very concrete piece of evidence in favor of the monarchy. Come on, there must be something a bit more.
You don't believe in the value of statesmanship and soft power, like you don't think that.
I do. But many times the BBC
backdoor duns have been happened because we have a powerful. Well, but again, when the BBC can't go to another country and have a meeting with its prime minister, always the Queen can. And there've been many cases in modern history where the Queen has served as that back channel.
But you've reduced soft power now, because you talk about soft power, and I give another example of something else, which is an immense source of soft power. Like, don't reduce it just down to the monarchy, because our soft power as a country is huge, and a lot of it is not contingent upon the monarchy. So it's not just going to like fritter away and disappear just because.
Plus, a prime minister can get a phone call with almost anyone as well. To be honest, Putin can get on a phone with every leader of every country.
Yes, but as I say, there's been numerous cases where, and look, and here's where I'm going to start arguing against my own case. But I think there are various cases where the current Queen has done a brilliant job as a statesperson, soft power, setting up meetings. And this is the fundamental problem with monarchies, is it all falls apart when Prince Charles then inherits that position. Will he be as good? And this is kind of what you guys were saying. A monarchy is neither good or bad, it's neutral. It's as good as the monarch. And the problem is often with heredited power. Yeah, you end up with, unfortunately, the person that was raised in a royal household as a spoilt prince is rarely as good as the old school.
You can't talk about it, Chris, but
I can neither confirm nor deny anything about that country. For context, Jacob, I've married a Thai and have a Thai child, and if I say anything,
he cannot say.
Not that I ever would say anything negative.
You never have, as far as I'm aware.
So, but in the Netherlands, you have the opposite, right? You have a king that was raised with good values, and now the daughter of the king is raised with good values, humanist, Western, compassionate, sharing value. And so it's a possibility as well.
Slow clap? I'm not really.
Do you think that's partly because they're paid less than in the UK? Because I think the UK, they have a lot more money than other royal families, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it had a lot more power as well. Yeah. Or have.
Part of the issue here is
we had a bigger empire.
So to take the other side and not just knock down your terrible arguments for monarchy and to actually give an argument specifically against monarchy.
See? This is my plan all along, to be so easy to defeat. You took pity on me and argued for me.
So to give an actual argument, like, it's inherited power by definition. I mean, like, that's bad, and they do have a role in politics. And I know the problem with monarchists often is that argument is simultaneously that they don't really do anything politically, but they do have a lot of soft power and they do a lot of good stuff politically, which is completely contradictory. So we know they have political power and they do wield it when it suits them. And that is wrong. We should be against that. I mean, you were giving us some beautiful spiel earlier about how you believe in democracy, and why does it fall apart when we get to a silly kind of institution?
I'll tell you why. Because monarchies have often been used as a buffer to stop dictators, and if you look at them, run the maths, republics are much more likely to be overthrown than traditional constitutional monarchies.
But what about Spain then, where Franco basically groomed the king to carry on his fascist regime? And then the king actually democratized Spain, which is kind of ironically an argument for monarchy. But I mean, that may well have happened without the king of Spain, actually, because clearly the people...
Yeah, he was playing the long game, see?
People were really annoyed with Franco and the dictatorship, right? So they eventually just went, well, no. And the king was like, yeah, probably should have a bit of democracy.
Like the Catholic Church, there are examples where it's been a force for good, and examples where it's been a force for good, like bad. And likewise with monarchies, sometimes they've helped keep things democratic, and sometimes they've joined the side. But it's why I said it's an argument that I don't actually believe. If you look into it, what happens is newer fledgling countries are less stable than older established countries that don't change, and so that's why it's an unfair thing. It's an argument actually made by Kraut. I don't know if you're familiar with that YouTuber. He does great history videos, but he definitely leans right on certain things. Okay. Toby, who couldn't be with us today, sadly, made a great point that the most precarious thing for a government is to have access to strategic resources, but be left-leaning, and it's likely to be invaded by America.
Yes, yeah. So what are your personal arguments? I feel like we've still not really got to the bottom of that for keeping the monarchy, because I feel like the way you pitched this to me when we were originally talking on Twitter was somewhat self-deprecatingly as, oh, I'm sure I'm wrong because I had because of the school I went to, or I can't remember what you said exactly. It's like, to what, I can take that like self-deprecatingly or facetiously, and it's funny, but what's your actual opinion? You must have something like, what concretely do you believe is good about the monarchy?
Get an extra day off, don't we?
Honestly, if I'm not playing devil's advocate for the sake of this debate format, I think a monarchy is as good as the monarchist. I think it's only good if it has the democratic support of people. I think that currently stands in the UK, and so probably the left should keep a bit quiet about it because it's not going to help us win any elections. And I think naturally when we have Charles or even William, there's some illusions that William would be a really massively popular monarch, but it does seem a fading and archaic system. And once it loses its democratic majority, then there should be another referendum. And
then we can
I think the problem with the referendum often, well, we don't need to, and that's the problem with the referendum as well, is it's so often binary. Monarchy, yes or no. Intentionally decided as such because that's an easy referendum to win, right? It's a big ask. Whereas if we were like, should we tax the monarchy 10% more? I think that would be a pretty popular one. And that's how you win, is just gently chip away. How about this land here? Should that be converted to hospitals? Have a referendum on that. That would win. That would be a hard win for the monarchs. It'd be like, no, but we need that house for our horses.
Just one little correction, Chris. You said the royals pay tax. They never pay tax. And they only get tax money. They don't pay tax. That's the great thing about being a royal. That's like the main... Do you know what I mean? The royal, they just don't get to ever pay tax.
Some people argue that the monarchy costs 65p per person per year. Right? Now, I think it's stupid to divide it by population. People only ever do that when they want to hide the true cost of something, but it's what, 40 million a year? It costs a British taxpayer. At the same point, the royal estate gives £2.60 per person per year back. So 200 million in taxes a year are raised by the royal estate. The visits of tourists is even more money.
No. The kind of economic conversation is it's testy grounds, and intellectually I think there's little clarity on it, because people pull out the figure, or the amount of money they bring in through tourism. We briefly talked about it before. It wouldn't disappear simply because we got rid of the monarchy. For example, right. Versailles is the biggest site of tourism based on a previous royal's house in the world, and obviously they're not kicking about anymore.
Yeah.
The question about
people
the money
still go
also,
to Buckingham Palace, right? You don't go there because you might see the Queen. You go there because it's like the history of the place and
exactly,
the changing of the guard.
Is it more specifically so the argument about the amount of money we get per person is based on the Crown estate, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which, in my understanding, I'm not really. I've never gotten like perfect clarity on that, whether it's the personal possession of that or whether it belongs to the Crown as an institution. Which, if the monarchy were dissolved, what would happen to it? I mean, the argument.
Yeah, it'd be like a corporation firing its board of directors, right? The corporation would still exist.
Yeah. I'm not really. I'm not sure how it works
it's
exactly. And the issue is that.
Doesn't the financial kind of distract from the real point, which is more the moral part? Why do we have an unelected leader with that much power?
I think they're both important. Like the decisions we make are obviously based on ethics, but finances and economics do play a part in that as well. So if there was a huge argument, I could be swayed, but ultimately, the possessions of the crown were ill-gotten, let's say, and I think we would mostly agree with that. I hope.
So are the possessions of most nation states, right? Like I would take the extreme point. If you want to abolish the monarchy, abolish nation states, because they're all imagined. None of them are real. They're based on the fact of shared language that came into being with printing, and royal houses are part of that illusion, that dream, that fantasy, that story that keeps nation states in being. And so if you want to abolish the monarchy, go ahead, but abolish nation states too.
Well, I don't necessarily think the two follow, but I do agree we can take that principle further and say give countries back to the people. There is no country which belongs to the people. I think we can all agree with that, I hope. And if we can take that radically further forward and say give the countries to the people that live there. I think that is what we're talking about when we talk about being more democratic.
And at least give the heart of India back. Do you know what I mean? That's sitting in the crown jewels. India went, we can give you an exact copy of that. You wouldn't know the difference, but then we can have our massive diamond back. And they just went, absolutely no way, don't be ridiculous. So I sort of see it as an ossification of this ancient, sort of still existing throwback of colonialism and, the whole conversation about reparations and returning these artifacts that are piled up in the British Museum. They're just kind of just another layer of like, no, this is our tradition. Regardless of the fact that I tradition way before.
I find it impossible to defend. Right, you walk around the British Museum and you're like, we just jack this stuff.
We could make exact replicas. No one would know, right? We could make exact replicas with today's technology. Yeah, we could keep the British Museum exactly how it is and give everything back to where it was stolen from. Easy.
Most interesting, if you ever talk to someone who defends the right of the British Museum to retain that stuff, they get really angry, emotional, irrational, and don't have any arguments. And if I'm honest, as I was saying to you, Jacob, I think most of my knee-jerk defense of the monarch has been instilled by my boarding school education. I find, similar to if I hear someone blaspheming, I just wince inside like a trained reaction that's been beaten out of me. If I hear someone say something bad about the Queen, I just go, oh no, no, leave Queenie alone.
We can recondition you now, right? How long have we got left? We can recondition you to hate the Queen and to blaspheme constantly.
I'm curious, how did they do that, Chris? Like, how did they actually indoctrinate you into having this reaction?
It's just unquestioning, and like most
the culture is habitual, so it's literally within the body. It gives you physical effects.
3 times a week you're going to an assembly where you pray to God and Queen and country, and if anyone ever questioned it, you'd be in front of the headmaster's office in a lot of trouble. And everyone around you's the same. So we would have fierce political debates, and one of the things, boarding school is part of that institution of raising children to go to India and run the country. They really is in the tradition to teach you to be very confident, question authority in a way I don't think state schools encourage. If you can out-argue your headmaster, you'll get out of trouble. That is part of the system. They want you to be a little tyrant leader. But there's guardrails. And one of the 3 things you'd never question, it was Queen. And so, it just is, it feels like blasphemy to me to hear it. And if I'm honest, I just have this inbuilt taught culture that I'm like, But why? What's Queenie ever done to you? She's wonderful.
Well, we'll give her a little cottage in the Cotswolds, and she'll be as wonderful as she wants there with her.
She could just get a job like everyone else. I don't know. Is that too much to ask? I don't know.
Well, she'd do very well if she was paid for every TV.
Do you know what I mean? But I mean, just
if she was paid for every TV appearance, no, like she wouldn't be working in a shop. She'd be like talking to Oprah weekly. Like, she'd be doing great.
This is interesting actually, because I think there's a genuine conversation to be had about the negative impact of monarchy on the family itself. Like, you're brought up in a family where, I mean, it's exploitative, and it's not recognized as such because they live in such like opulent wealth, but it really is. It's a horrendous existence, and we know that now.
They are an exotic pet of the crown, right?
Yeah, that's all you can ever be. And when you see, a prince try to go independent, you have this huge apparatus of the kind of aristocracy against them, and as these conservative newspapers or just the press, media, certain quarters of it, just completely rail against them. They're pilloried. And again, I have limited sympathy for someone who's so incredibly wealthy, but I do have some sympathy for them still. It's disgusting, and it's not good for them. It's not good for us.
It does remind me of when conservative religious Americans start getting angry with the Pope because he says something that sounds left to them. And you're like, well, sorry, I thought you were Catholic, and you're disagreeing with the Pope. Like, is that the sort of Catholic you are now? And it's saying like these staunch monarchists, and then Prince Harry says, I'm not happy here, and me and my wife want to leave. Oh, my, you fucking the stuff that comes out their mouth. And you're like, sorry, I thought this was an unquestionable authority. Is he not allowed to have an argument with his brother? Like, that seems reasonable.
This kind of comes back to what we were talking about before, where, and I think you did it a little bit, I don't know whether facetiously or not, where a lot of conservatives and pro-monarchy people equate an institution with a culture. I am the absolute epitome of a kind of like get rid of the borders, kind of lefty commie type in many ways. But I've just spent a week in the Peak Districts, and I walk around, and I'm godless and all that kind of stuff. I walk around, I'm like, look at that beautiful church. Let's go in there and look at that, and let's go eat like Bakewell pudding, and isn't this food amazing? And this culture is brilliant. And reading about the history of all these local areas, and this is the culture to me, and I'm not in any way against that. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And culture is what makes life worth living, and I don't think it's something that we can equate entirely with just an institution. We can get rid of
equate entirely, but they're intricately connected, and history has evolved together, right? Especially here in Europe, you can't talk about nation states without talking about the kingdoms, the empires they built.
Of course, but we can't talk about it without talking about slavery, or to take a less contentious issue, religion. Like, it doesn't mean we have to stay Christian and keep keep a state religion. We don't need to. I mean, that's another conversation, which is again very much along similar lines as this one. But there are tons of things which are part of our history and tradition, and we're not saying wipe the history books clean.
Yeah,
we're not saying knock down Buckingham Palace and put some high-rise flats there. These things are part of still teach about
this is what we partly did this, so we deconstructed it, right? Religion is still existing. It's not any more official state religion. It's not forced upon people. So similar, we did it with the monarchy. It's
some of my favorite nightclubs are in churches.
It's a constitutional monarchy, and we choose to have some symbological representative. Spend some money on that.
The argument there, I mean, we still have a state religion in the UK, and the argument there seems to be, if I take your argument seriously, is we've got rid of it to some degree, but let's just keep it now. It's an inherently conservative. Let's just keep it. And it's just this clinging on to what ground is left to seed. Like, oh, we won't seed any more ground. We don't need to seed any more ground. We've seeded this ground now, so let's stop here. It's like, well, let's keep going. We don't.
When will the left be happy? Haven't we given you enough?
That is the kind of conservative argument in many ways, isn't it? It's like, well, ultimately, I think the point of being progressive is being progressive politically and individually. I recognize that I'm not who I am today. Sorry, I wasn't who I am today 15 years ago. I've progressed, I've developed, I've learned things. I don't have some of the same beliefs. I don't do some of the same things, which I now think are bad or unproductive. And I'm hopefully going to continue doing that till the day I die. And I think society should be the same. And I understand that some people don't like that because it feels like it's just this constant rapid pace of movement. But I think inherently that's a good thing. And there's always going to be that tension, obviously, but things are never perfect. There's always a little bit more improvement we can make. And I think I try to do that in my personal life, and I think that's basically what my politics are.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because we talked about history, we talked about current day, and then you just kind of brought it to future, Jacob. And I think that's a really good point. In the future, we're still going to imagine having these royal families. Like, we need to imagine something that's beyond capitalism eventually. Do you know what I mean? We can't just have capitalism forever. There's got to be some better system. There's got to be some better system than nation states, some evolution or some new way of doing things, like maybe 50, maybe 500, maybe 1,000 years. We're still going to have monarchies in 200-300 years. It just seems weird. Do you know what I mean? I just think we'll just go beyond it. It's just a question of like, are we going to do it now? Or are we going to do it later? Or are we going to do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe in 200 years we won't. And I think, like, I'm talking here with
why hold on to it for that 200 years? Yeah.
Well, I'm talking here with 3 British people, and I think you have a lot of reasons why you're against the monarchy, right? There's a lot of things that need to change in the UK, way more so than in the Netherlands.
Prince Andrew.
Well, in the Netherlands, in 200 years, there not be any constitutional monarchy. That's just purely a symbological play that we like to do and have some cultural recognition in. And the king and the queen, they visit like disaster area when it gets flooded, because they're not 99 years old like your queen is, right? They're very active, involved with the people, and people like it. And I just don't see people really needing at this moment in time to put too much focus on getting rid of that. I think there's quite a lot of other progressive left-wing things that we should implement way sooner than abolishing something that doesn't cost us that much money, gives us a couple nice things culturally, and it doesn't really destroy much in the Netherlands, right? But Thailand, yeah, sure, get rid of it. UK, yeah, sure, get rid of it, or at least change it. There's plenty of countries which you could mention that you don't want to have this element.
I'm perfectly willing to cede that ground. It doesn't damage that much. It doesn't cost that much. They do some nice things. That's the weakest argument I've ever heard in my life from the pro something side. I mean, imagine people want to leave the European Union. The argument, hey, it's not that harmful. Could be worse. Some nice things. Get nice blue passports. That's fine. I'll cede that ground. But it's what do people say? Weak sauce. That's what it is. It's just, I don't know.
Milk toast.
Milk toast. Yeah. It's fine. That's not a.
Here's my fundamental.
That is the strongest defense, though. They're all right. Leave them alone. They never harm no one.
Here's my fundamental critique of the royal family. It's just glorified nepotism, isn't it? Let's be honest. We don't like nepotism in any other aspect. Yet for them, it's fine. What? Yeah. Explain that to me, please. What the hell?
Can I try the synthesis between Finn and Meringue's points, and then I'll throw it back to Jacob? So I do think often the envy and the rage against the royal family is quite misplaced when you compare it to corporate nepotism, corporate anti-democratic measures. Like I just think it's disproportionate, because why has he got a tiara on? Why is he wearing a crown? And you're like, there's people stealing so much more from me. People get so angry about Prince Charles writing some letters. I'm like, how much of a lobbyist do you think he has compared to BP, compared to like all these other corporations that pay a lot less tax and do a lot more damage to our democracy? So I will concede that they are not a democratic, lovely institution, but I also think a lot of the rage is misplaced envy rather than actual political concern.
Do you think so, though? Do you think like I'm envious of them? Do you think I really just want to be in their position? Oh, if only I could be.
Yeah, mate, you'd love a tiara and some corgis.
He was talking to me yesterday about the great new world of Finn. Yeah. Faffers need to go to jail. No, they need to get shot on place or put into re-education camps.
That was an off-the-record conversation, right?
I think Chris might be onto something, because I do often say to people, when I'm king, because it's fine for me to be king, I'm allowed to be in charge. Then
I'm pro-monarchy, as long as I was the king. Yeah.
When I'm king, these are the law I would lay down.
We can't ever change that now, because it was like divine ordination. That was like God said we're the, like, you can't, Jacob, then go like, yeah, God said it was me. Actually, they'll be like, no, but God doesn't exist, so what the hell are you talking about? There's no way for anyone else to become king now. Do you know what I mean? Because God's basically dead in the modern world. So like, how do you ever get rid of them? You can never be king, unfortunately.
What if you pull the sword from the stone?
Oh yeah, true. Just do that.
Although there is a rise of strongman politics in modern democracies, and we seem to be drifting towards, we need a big, strong person to lead us away from the democratic masses that keep voting for the wrong thing.
That's true. I might be
It's
in
a
with a chance
worrying
there.
trend.
Because although I'm not strong, I am big. So I could be a big man at the very least.
Jacob for Prez. He's announcing it here.
I'd vote for you, Jacob.
Yeah, so
Please
you
be nice
get
to
the
us when you're
opportunity to
king.
vote for me once, but then there'll be no future referendums on it. That will be
exactly
it. That'll be me.
Once, and that's it. Get Jacob done in power, and then.
So what about an absolute monarchy? Isn't there a point to be made for a strong authoritative figure?
Or like in the Middle East.
Or China, right? Like
No.
one big leader of communism, and he's going to save the world from poverty.
But it's not
the only
monarchy,
thing you
is it?
need to do is accept him as the one and only leader, but he'll save you out of poverty.
I would love to do an episode on populism and the fall of democracy. It definitely seems to be crumbling. If you look at sort of Southeast Asia, they used to be cutting deals with America to stay democratic. I mean, oh no, I can't talk about Thailand. Sorry. This is the joy of monarchies. Like, can't say anything bad about them.
Exactly. Is that not just ridiculous? Can't ever speak publicly about one certain country that has a king that's so powerful they could just ban me forever from that country. It's kind of like a quite.
No, I think it's great. What are you talking about?
Are you allowed to talk in like
I think
innuendo?
I think it's brilliant.
Are you allowed to talk in euphemisms like, oh, the problem with Burger King?
Yeah.
I imagine that the authorities' bots would flag Burger King because the word king in it. And so, in theory, you could be in hot water for criticizing Burger King and you would have to argue your case
Okay.
in front of the...
That's a very strong pro-monarchy argument.
It's an argument for McDonald's, traditional Scottish family. Abolish Burger King.
I was going to say something that was said earlier about China. A good debate would be, are China actually communist? Because I don't think it's actually a very interesting debate because there's one correct answer, but it's a very fiery debate. It's a very good one for getting people riled up.
The problem is, again, we'd have to have a guest that disagreed. We are talking about China next week, actually, but I always like to say that the Cold War, you had the thesis, synthesis, antithesis, and the synthesis is America ended up adopting the police state and China ended up adopting corporate capitalism. And I always say it's funny, you see like Steven Pinker showing these rising trends of how rich everyone's getting as proof that neoliberalism won. And you're like, where are most of those people from? That would be China. And the left will say, oh, that's because they're communists. It's proof that communism is brilliant. And the right will say, well, that's proof that capitalism is brilliant. And you're like, we're all claiming this victory. We're double counting our stats here, guys. It doesn't work.
Well, then everyone wins. It's okay.
What China does do well, that strong man populism doesn't, is having more a plan beyond the next election cycle. And that's something that I think is fundamentally broken with our systems. Especially now media moves faster and faster, is that we need to have, like, when America had its 3 houses that was set up to counterbalance it. That kind of needs rejigging for we need a house that has a 10-year plan, especially for things like climate change, because it's not even just like the next election cycle they're looking towards, it's the next news cycle. The attention span's got so infinitesimally small now.
So here would be a great argument for pro monarchy if monarchists actually had this kind of plan, like the Japanese emperor, for example.
Prince Charles cares about the environment. Okay.
Yeah,
I think I won.
But which other royal does?
The prosecution rests, Your Honour. I think.
Like, why aren't all the royals doing what he does? Do you know what I mean?
They're busy with their state visits and things.
To take that seriously again, the issue is that the general population is almost invariably further ahead on those kind of issues than some select group of whether it's the monarchy or our political class. So again,
the same with the church, right? They're rarely leading morally.
Yeah. The church are very good at leading from behind. Exactly.
Yeah, I think now we're starting to have some. The Methodist Church just said, "Oh, actually, you know what? We're not against the gays," and you're like, "Slow clap, welcome." So that Internet Explorer meme, you're like, "Welcome to the team, guys." Good to have some moral authority from you. 70 years too late.
So that's a church. You could argue that the Dalai Lama does lead morally. His religious movement, and the Dalai Lama is in a kind of way hereditary king as well. It's a post-reincarnation hereditary king.
I mean, if you accept that reincarnation is real, yes, but if you say, well, it's not real and they just selected him because of his qualities, then it's not hereditary at all. So I'd argue it's not really a monarchy, but an interesting case nonetheless.
There is some nepotism and family hierarchies in the lamas.
He's ending it, hasn't he? He's like self-abolished, the lamas.
Yeah, but that's because China has gotten involved, right, with the Panchen Lama. The system has been what is it?
Retired. Abolished?
Exposed to the Chinese. So
could you ask them to take a look at the British monarchy, see if they can do the same thing over here?
It would get a consultant.
As long as there's a democratic mandate.
Yeah.
So, like all my favourite guests, Jacob, you've come on and you said, do you know what would have been a more interesting conversation to have than this? Why aren't we talking about China? I feel very similar to my attempts at devil's advocating Brexit. That you saw I quickly ran out of steam. There isn't a strong argument for it other than people like it for now. So please don't mention election because I want Labour to win. And there are too many on the left that will just fuck our chances of winning an election, if you like. And we talked about country and flags, but borders is the other one. I actually feel a similar way about borders. Push comes to shove, of course, like refugees, and we should be kinder and look after them and take more immigrants and all that. But again, it's a very politically unpopular opinion to voice in the middle of an election with the majority of people. And unfortunately, if you believe in democracy, you have to convince.
It's because of the press, though, isn't it? Let's be honest. The press have been leading that argument, leading up to the whole Brexit, who were actually people that were funded by like people who wanted not to look at climate. They wanted people to focus on immigration rather than climate change.
So would you say nationalise the press?
So at least not have a monopoly in the UK, for example. Like the Murdoch monopoly is ridiculous. I don't see how that's a free press. Like you've got to have the BBC, have a government press, and then have some like non-monopolized range of different options, and that would be great. That would be much better than how it is at the moment.
Like break up monopolies, like
we'll do it in everything else. Okay, maybe not
competition commission does.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Murdoch owns so much, 70%, isn't it? And I mean, as soon as then you put money in Murdoch's pocket, he's going to run whatever story you want. We know that immigration isn't that big.
And again, Murdoch, paid no taxes for years. I think he wasn't allowed to go in the UK for 20 years, despite I don't know how he can be avoiding that much tax, illegal to land in the UK, but still owning most of our newspapers. That seems
power in it.
Fucked up. And then he's literally a kingmaker, right? He made Blair, Matt Hancock. I don't like the fact that Murdoch has photos of each member of the political party and at his choosing or someone else's choosing. Who knows? You need this photo published? Cool.
I don't think he's kingmaker. I think he's the modern king, isn't he? Media mogul. He's basically a king. Who's going to inherit the Murdoch empire?
I think when you're at that point,
he does have sons.
You get to a certain point in wealth, don't you? Where it's just like, well, why would I want to be a king? If you're Jeff Bezos,
that sounds like work. Yeah,
better options now.
It's a demotion, isn't it? If you're Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, like becoming like merely the monarch of the United Kingdom, like that's a massive demotion.
Sure, but then think about
they're done with Earth at this point. The billionaires are like bored of Earth. We're going up there.
Well, who has the power in England to stop Murdoch? That's pretty much the Queen.
She does actually have that special veto, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Wasn't she abusing
And
that
who's going to stop Bezos in the United States? Well, it's quite a bit more complicated.
Prince Harry. I believe in them.
Yeah, we sent a man over there to sort him out. Yeah.
Let's see how that goes.
Instead, he became a celebrity and he's talking with Oprah, so it didn't go to plan. They corrupted him. Their glimmer.
Goes quick.
Oh, gents, I'm sorry that wasn't a better debate. We ended up all agreeing. Got nothing for you.
No, I don't think we do fully agree though, because like, what would be your final like? What do you actually want to happen? Do you know?
No borders, no kings, no countries.
But you're again, let's have a royal family as a symbolic thing.
I'm saying in the ultimate extreme, I don't want to have nation states. I don't want to have borders. I don't want to have any ruling family or any ruling authoritative system anywhere. Like I'll argue full anarchy if needed. But in the meantime, we're not going there. So in the meantime, yeah, I'm kind of in the Netherlands. I'm kind of okay with.
You don't mind too much. Yeah. What about you, Chris?
Final state. The problem with final state is I would always want democracy, and I imagine that would shift and change with the needs of the time and the zeitgeist. But yeah, we'd probably end up in a very similar position to what Meringue just proposed, all homogenous in our red work vest going to our vegan factory.
What about you,
with Xi Jinping's face on it, though, because you'll belong to the Chinese.
What about you, Jacob?
We'd all be dressed, instead of the Queen with corgis, we would all be left-wing furries, and we would be dressed as corgis. That's the future. It goes full circle.
That is a true nightmare society. So I guess my final position is, like, similarly, it doesn't keep me up at night. It's not my number one concern. I think it is fine ultimately. It's not the main thing that's damaging our society. It's not the main thing that's holding us back. But from a purely intellectual standpoint, there's no conversation to be had whatsoever. Right. I'm right, and everyone who disagrees with me is wrong.
You are right. You are right.
I tried.
But yeah. I think that is my final position. But I definitely, you keep bringing it up facetiously. I definitely want to push back against that kind of like cultureless, homogenous idea. Like that is just. I mean, I know you don't genuinely believe that, but for anyone listening who might be, if you've listened this far and you're still listening and you're a monarchist, that's absolutely not what culture is, and cultural diversity, and what makes a place a place. It is what makes life worth.
Culture happens on the micro level, not on the macro level.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's a nice way to put it, actually. Yeah.
Nice, good. So we're sorted then. We all agree. Nice.
Okay, let's kill the Queen.
Solved. On to the next one.
Queen.
Get it that one out.
Next topic. We've got to change it now, haven't we, to just binary thinking? That's a bit annoying.
Yeah, just bunch of bro socialists agreeing with each other. That's the new podcast title.
I'm a terrible vegetarian, basically. I keep falling off the wagon, but I used to be much better at it when where I used to work, and I was eating some lunch. I don't know what it was noodles, whatever. And everyone else is eating meat, but I don't talk about it. I don't say it to people, but people trying to argue with me, like, I'm not interested. And I was just like, I can't remember how we got onto it, but I decided to be a bit edgy and make the argument that if you're okay with eating meat, you should be out there fucking animals, basically, because ultimately one is not more harmful than the other. Right. And people lost their
You'd make
shit.
a great vegan, mate.
Lose my job. I shouldn't have said that at work. Went down like a lead balloon.
Yeah, you'd make a great vegan. I mean, there's no difference, right? Torturing dogs because you like the sound, it's the same thing fundamentally. A vegan. Yeah.
Jesus.
It's true.
That is where we ended up on last episode about moral dilemmas, right? About what's wrong with a guy fucking a chicken carcass before eating. Everyone would feel moral repulsion.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure this bit gets edited out so everyone's free to talk about whatever they want.
We've got to edit that bit out for sure. That's a spoiler.
We don't need what? That was a great point. That was my pièce de résistance of a point.
No, I'm saying let's edit it out.
Salt Bay philosophy. Yes, that's true. We can't talk about fucking chicken carcasses on back-to-back episodes. I agree.
It could be your thing. Like it's a callback. Every episode you talk about chicken fucking.
Becomes our running joke, and everyone's like, "Oh, you should check out this new podcast." But in all sincerity, like, it is an absolute moral catastrophe, the failure of the royal family to prosecute Prince Andrew, and it really is the death knell for them as an organisation, and rightly so.
They've weathered previous storms, so they might be able to weather this one.
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah.
They're like
a little bit positive.
Yeah.
I didn't even realise Lord Mountbatten, killed by the IRA in Northern Ireland, I believe. Apparently, he was a nonce as well. Mm-hmm. That story did not cross across the Irish Sea. But I talked to my Irish friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he was over here fucking our kids." I was like, "Pardon?" I hadn't heard that.
I think it's just better to just blanket assume the worst of the lot and just.
Not Queenie. Not Queenie, please. Can't handle it.
Okay, except for her.
Wow, how many years does she have left?
Okay. Oh, that's the worst kind of blasphemy. Oh my God.
I can
she's not
I can see the physical revulsion on your face when we make these jokes.
It's deep in there, isn't it?
This is what I found so much with this podcast, is that I was always arguing the centrist conservative, not necessarily agreeing with it, but more familiar with the argument. And the more I've read and the more I've learned, the more quickly I've become radicalized. And the more I've realized that the only argument for these positions is, but I like it and I feel it, and I was raised that that was the only way. And more and more I realize that the right doesn't have a logical argument. It doesn't have any firm ground to stand on it other than, no, I don't like that argument. It makes me feel angry when I hear it.
And the Peterson, no, like, it could be a lot worse if we don't stick to what we know. It might be terrible. So yeah, but it could be really good. Come on.
Yeah. So have you put much of a concerted effort into getting conservatives on? Because I think that's where it could get interesting.
No, we did it a little bit.
Wow, we had a fascist.
Well, no, we put a neo-Nazi on. That was different.
Yeah, that was probably a bit too
to be honest, we have tried, but they've always backed down. When they see it sort of this debate, nuance, deep philosophy, they've never been interested in pursuing it. And I think there's a reason. I think they know they'd get crushed.
So I'm on this Discord server, which quite frankly is just full of like right-wing American lunatics. But it's fun to go on and debate with them a bit. And one of them was saying gun control never works, blah, blah, blah. It literally never works. And I was like, well, it does work. Like, here's, bunch of research into it and the versions of it, what works best. And I go, they don't even bother reading it. The reply just, oh, you want to ban all guns? No, that's not what I want to do. Read the research. And I point to one specific example, a piece of gun control, which is literally just mandating proper storage of firearms. So, that by default, you just keep it locked in a cupboard.
Yeah.
And then the reply is just, oh yeah, but how we're going to enforce that? Is the police going to go into every person's house? You have to register your gun and they're going to check. It's like, you don't even need to do that, because you don't need to enforce something for at least some percentage of people to actually follow the law, which would see some level of reductions in childhood death, like child accidental death, which is what the evidence points to. They just complete refusal to read the evidence or engage with it whatsoever. I'm like a lefty, liberal, soft-brained, limp-wristed, whatever, and it's just, there's no conversation to be had, because they're incapable of entertaining an idea outside of like their immediate world. And unfortunately, that sounds super condescending. And these are like the most kind of Trumpist kind of right-wing. But it's just,
you should check out our episode.
Yeah.
So we interviewed a far left gun activist, and that was really interesting. She raised some good points. The other one is Beau of the Fifth Column, who's also like ex-military, deep south, but very, very left. Also, like, makes an argument against borders and how they make no sense, and it does a much better job at speaking to his people because they'll listen to him, right? So yeah, it's been interesting talking to these far left types, but similarly, like, anyone that's really into guns wouldn't disagree with the need to have them locked away safely and all these rules and regulations. But some people are just spouting out talking points of the NRA, right? They're just like, they get it on Fox News and that was a press release paid for by the corporate sponsors. And they just love licking those boots. They're just parroting corporate talking points. It's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
But you can only like have a decent conversation with someone who actually wants to listen. If they don't want to listen, there's not really much that can be done, right?
Or people who have a relationship with reality, to be quite frank, because I don't know how else to put it, because I hate saying this because I sound like one of those people who's like, I have a black friend, but I have conservative friends. You know what I mean? It's very much like this. Well, despite everything I said, I do have conservative friends, and especially since Brexit, they've just clearly, because they're not idiots and they have a relationship with reality, they've moved away from the Conservative Party, moved away from conservatism in many ways. And it's very hard, especially in the current political climate, to have a relationship with someone who is still Tory voting, Brexiteer, right wing, because I've always been suspicious of it, you know what I mean? But it's become more and more clear that these people do not have a relationship with reality. And I know I keep saying that, but that's the way I like to phrase it, because it really is just, to me, it just encapsulates what it is. It's
no,
just a failure
I
to
do think
acknowledge
that the right has just been hollowed out. And it sort of makes sense because, 10 years ago when you'd had Labour for a long time and then there was rising things they'd done wrong and protests against them and that, you could see that there were probably some good faith, genuine people fighting against Tony Blair, New Labour, right? But whereas now you're like, tell me why Boris is the best. Talk to me slowly. I'm going to need you to really explain why this is the best we can do. And they're like, oh, but fucking, Keir Starmer. And I'm, no. I'm not here to defend Keith, right? Tell me why Boris is the best with a straight face. And they can't. And
won't that be
a weird
that
exercise.
will become very clear in the next election, no? Because Boris won on the mandate of get Brexit done. The next election is not going to be, let's keep getting Brexit done. Do you know what I mean? It'll be done by then. It's done already, isn't it? So what's he going to? He's going to run on a different platform, or he's not going to run. So and then people are going to realise like.
Here's my prediction: at the 11th hour, and the Tories are really good at doing this, and this is why I warn my friends in Labour not to keep picking on Boris. The 11th hour, the Tories will go, yeah, we agree. Boris was shit. Throw him under the bus. Everything that went wrong with COVID was wrong. Everything that went wrong with Brexit was wrong. Here's a new, amazing person. The chosen one that will fix everything Boris did. Or you want Keir Starmer? What does he stand for? This new person is amazing. And so much of it will fall apart, unfortunately.
Hopefully it'll be Rory. Do you remember Rory? He's the only good Conservative I've ever seen. What's his last name? Rory something.
Yeah.
Rory
he was
Stewart.
Cool, though. That's it, Rory Stewart.
He's certainly the best of a bad bunch. He's the MP
by far the least
an area
bad.
near where I was brought up. And I generally do. I've said this to people before. Like he's much better, and people try to argue against that by saying like, oh, he's still Tory. He is, and that's still bad. But there is still
he's trying to bridge something, right? Yeah.
At the end of the day, someone is in power. We can't just magic away our electoral system and have the best version tomorrow. At the end of the day, if he, let's say hypothetically, he were the leader of the Conservative Party at some future date, he would be less bad than most of the Tories, and that is something. Less bad is always better, at the very least. I totally agree.
Yeah. That would argue. Yeah, so I'm simultaneously a member of Labour Party, and then I've just joined the Socialist Workers Party. Interestingly, they all used to be Labour a couple of years ago and got kicked out in the Great Purge, getting rid of all the Corbynistas. Yeah. And I'm now hearing it from both sides. So I go talk to the Labour Party. They're like, he actually had to be interviewed. This was just to manage a very small Facebook page for Labour Southwest Devon. It's tiny. Interviewed and asked on my feelings about Israel, my feelings about Corbyn. And then
what did you say?
Last night before last, I said I joined the party just after Keir. I have to stop saying Keith. I've been hanging around with the Socialists too long. If I call him Keith in front of the Labourites, I'll get in trouble. It's actually true. I did join the Labour Party just after Keir Starmer got elected as leader, which is a good line. The reason I did it is because you guys dared me on the podcast to do it. So. Keir Starmer's almost a coincidence. but yeah, so I'm good at salesman mode kicks in, and I know what people want to hear. So and honestly, I think the episode we did on Labour, I was very skeptical of the claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Having spoke to a few Jewish members, especially down here in rural Devon, it wasn't just legitimate concerns towards Israeli government's behaviour. There was this Illuminati conspiracy theory. There was some anti-Semitism flying around that Corbyn didn't do enough. Yes, and Corbyn didn't do enough to criticise it. There are a lot of Jewish people in the party that felt quite threatened and pushed out.
But that's a completely different thing, right? Saying Corbyn didn't do enough to stamp out these ridiculous conspiracy theories.
So saying he was an anti-Semite and
completely different.
Yes, and do you want to count times members of the Conservative Party said racist things and compare the two?
Pretty similar to Labour, if you look at the statistics. Yeah, there's an anti-Semitism problem. It's quite small, but it's there in UK politics.
So the young Conservatives in Plymouth, at least, have been banned from going out for a year because they all got drunk and were getting in arguments with people in pubs and telling them what they really thought in racial expletives.
Our next mission should be to join the Conservatives. Get them from the inside.
Some gonzo journalism.
I could pass.
You definitely could.
I could pass. I'm a day walker. Right?
Sure. We should do it and then use your influence to subtly manipulate the party towards.
Yeah, that's what every member of a political party does.
Yeah, I could just imagine you with the Conservatives. Guys, this worker co-ops thing sounds like a good idea.
Sounds profitable. That's what I'd say. I'd be like, say what you want about their politics, but I think there's a profit margin to be made here, boys. Let's join a cooperative. Comrades.
Yeah.
It's too lucrative a market to let the left have a monopoly on it. Conservatives unite. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Jacob, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Thank you for having me.
And do you have a podcast, or is it just the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I do have a podcast. It's basically the same thing now. So I started doing a podcast about underrated music. Started just before lockdown. It's not really going anywhere. It's not really taking off. So I just started putting a bit more effort into like doing video essays, which I also just export the audio for and just pretend it's another episode of my podcast.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, the main place that people can find me is on Big Yellow Praxis on YouTube.
Yeah, nice. Good stuff. And have you heard of a band called Portico Quartet?
I don't think so. No,
I'd recommend looking at them. They're quite underrated and they're bloody great. So yeah, maybe it's a bit too jazzy for your taste.
No, I like if it's more like fusiony, I'm into that. But if
it's like crossover jazz, particularly their album from 2007, Knee Deep in the North Sea. That's amazing.
Okay,
but you might like it. I don't know. They're quite underrated. So if you
I found them. Yeah, nice. I'll definitely listen to that. It sounds good.
Sweet. I'll check out your channel as well. Nice one. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much.
We'll put the links.
I really recommend it. Really fun. Yeah, we will. Yeah, links in the show notes. Right. Jacob, you're brilliant. You smashed the Monarchy in 20 minutes. Let's be honest. The rest was just filler.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Then.
Yeah, thanks, man. Good to meet you.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers, mate.
You too. Bye.
Nice. I'm gonna take a shower because I'm fucking